Happiness. Who cares? Well, one should care. Indeed, studies have shown that happier people are more successful across the board in all areas of life. However, in turn, it was shown that successful people are not happier, which means that peak performance and being your absolute best self necessitate that you find happiness first for success to follow. And that said, you might think, what is happiness even? How the hell do you define it? And guess what? If you ask 10 different people, then you will literally get 10 different responses. And that's because happiness does have a subjective component to it. However, as a neuroscientist myself, I must emphasize that there are biological and psychological mechanisms that universally control our happiness. Now, there are genetic differences in how happy an individual is. There are things that one can do in order to become happier. There are neurochemicals that produce the feelings that we associate with happiness, and these neurochemicals are dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. There's the fact that because of the turnover of these neurochemicals, you cannot be happy, but also not unhappy indefinitely. Now, there are also three levels of happiness, believe it or not, that one can reach, as studies indicate. And finally, there is flow, which is a brain state that is unarguably linked to happiness and fulfillment. As such, in today's episode, I will be joined once more by the passion and purpose coach Teany Hidalgo, who has helped many of her clients find their place of Zen. And together, we will discuss the neuroscientific and psychological phenomenon that happiness is. And in addition, we will also share anecdotes from ourselves and from our clients who we literally saw transforming from deeply depressed to happy. And finally, both Teany and I will give you a tool of which you can become happier instantly. So by watching the Q&A, you will understand how happiness is created in the brain and how you can leverage this knowledge to make yourself happy. Also, episode 3 of our Q&A series, which will take part in January 2022, will be about stress and recovery. So if you have any questions for Teany and myself in regards to this topic, just drop your questions in the comments section and we will make sure to answer them for you. And lastly, of course, I got a neuroscience and psychology-backed high-performance course coming up in January as well. Now, if you want to go from zero to hero, if you want to have a breakthrough, if you want to live a new and more balanced life, or if you want to blow anyone else out of the water, whatever it takes style, then contact me via email, niklas.peterreich@gmail.com until the 28th of December to secure your spot and a discount. Now that said, the spots are limited, so it's best to take this opportunity ASAP. Now, there will be a 100% money back guarantee because I will personally ensure that you will leave this course as your very best self. And I will ensure that you will find your passion, you will find what your purpose is, and you will acquire the elite performance skills in order to make your biggest dreams a reality. But beware, this course is for serious people. Serious people who want to change their lives. Now, we will apply neuroscience, for example, by optimizing dopamine release in the brain for motivation. I will help you to get into flow. We will sharpen your focus, etc. And also, we will adjust your psychology to make you an elite performer. So, in light of all of that, I expect your full input. But in return, you will be rewarded with becoming better than ever before. Now back to the video. If you're excited, please just take a moment to smash those like and subscribe buttons so that we can build an army of high performance and neuroscience enthusiasts together. I would highly appreciate it. My name is Nicholas. I'm a neuroscientist dementia researcher as well as a high performance and flow coach. And these are the mechanisms that create happiness in the brain and how you can make yourself happier. All right, and we are officially live. Here we go. Q&A, happiness. Nice to see you,
Hi.
Yanni.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun to be here again. Yay. We're back.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've just said it. You're actually more motivated now that it's almost about to be Christmas. So that is the way it should be, in fact. You know, if it's the end of the week and you're looking forward to the weekend, probably not the way it should be. But on the other hand, if it's the end of the week and you feel like you can push harder, you feel like you enjoy work, that is probably the better way to go with it, at least long term, in my opinion. And
Absolutely.
that's what the
I
entire.
always find that these things are like treats, right? Like when you have holidays and like days off and things, they're treats. And I always see, well, we'll talk about this in happiness, right? Things to look forward to for me keep me motivated in doing what I do, right? Because I have things to look forward to later on, whether it's, the time off or going somewhere or, maybe a piece of chocolate or something small. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, right? So different things.
It actually reminds me of Brandon Burchard, since we talked about him a lot. And he was actually making a little post on LinkedIn a while ago. And he said that the happiest people always anticipate something, they always look forward to something.
Mm.
So, like you said, you get out of bed and you look forward to having a nice dinner. You look forward to seeing your colleagues at work. You look forward to getting back to work. Just
Yeah,
again, doing a work. I do that every morning. You know, I get up and I'm excited for the challenge. That's why I tackle it at least. So yeah, just don't
love
overdo
it.
the chocolate, I guess. Might not be all the best.
Hey, every once in a while you have to throw in something sweet, you know?
Again, as long as you don't do it every single day, it might be good.
Agreed.
Awesome. All right. So just a general introduction for everyone who joins. So my name is Nicholas. I'm a neuroscientist. So I currently develop a drug for dementia at Lancaster University. So that's part of my PhD studies. And in addition to that, I'm of course also a high performance and a flow coach. We will talk about flow a lot today because it is linked to happiness. But that said, let's
Yeah.
move the spotlight to you, Tiani.
Yeah, so I'm Tiani, and I've actually been working in corporate as a user experience professional for over 20 plus years. So I've engaged really, really deeply with different clients and understanding the psychology behind why people interact on the web and mobile and all things in the different ways. And so my burnout journey led me to become a burnout and purpose coach. And that's why we're kind of talking about all this stuff. Is I think you and I have so much in common with some of the topics that we talk about, even though we've come at them from different lives and different perspectives, which is nice.
Definitely. I think happiness has a lot to do with personal experiences, but I think the point of our Q&A today is not just to give personal experiences. Those are important, of course, but as a neuroscientist, of course, there's also the biological side. And of
Yep.
course, there's psychology, there's studies. And again, for everyone, for those who are viewing, that is what I want to show you. And that is what are actually the mechanisms, what happens in the brain, what actually does make you happy from a biological point. And it's not to make happiness systematic. It's not to become a robot, a happiness robot it's not about injecting neurochemicals in your brain to make yourself happy. That's a weird idea. Although I've seen that in sci-fi
I've seen
videos.
it too. That's not just sci-fi.
But the point here really is to get an overall understanding. And I think, again, awareness, that's where it all starts. And
Yep.
I think the point of our entire Q&A series is to break the dogmas. So everyone has a different opinion, and we want to give you all a closer look into what are our experiences as coaches, what are other people's experiences, and of course, what is the psychology and the neuroscience behind it. And you can, of course, make use of all of that because we will also show you a tool at the end of the Q&A. And with this tool, very simple, guys, you can actually become more happy.
I love
All
it.
right, that said, let's kick off. Because
Yeah.
the first thing I wanted to say is that, believe it or not, success does not make happy. Success does not make happy. On the other hand, to be happy makes you more successful. And you might think that sounds quite random, quite generic, Nick. And the reality is, it's not my opinion, it's actually shown in studies. There's a 2019 meta-analysis. They looked at all studies, and it has repeatedly been shown in studies that happier people are more successful, but successful people are not more happy.
Mm,
So just kick off this session with the fact that if you're not happy now, then there might be some work to do.
that is so true.
Happiness is a process.
Mhm.
That's it. What I also found really interesting by looking at the studies was actually the fact that grittier people, so grit is, again, perseverance, grit is pushing hard. So those people that like to go to the limits, who like to challenge themselves, so grittier people are actually more happy. That's also proven in studies. We will get into why this is the case later. It's related to flow, in fact. But in order to kick off the session, let me ask you a question, Tiani. And that is, are you actually familiar with the psychological research or the biological research behind happiness?
Well, it's interesting because the things that you said make sense, right? In terms of like what you said about success, about creative people and things like that. And then I remember there was a movie out called Happy. It was actually a documentary. And in the documentary, they talked about happiness, obviously, and the factors that contribute to happiness. And what they said actually was probably different than what you would expect, which is that 50% of happiness is genetic, right? Which means that there's probably some, DNA slash chemical slash tons of physiological things that contribute to happiness. But then 40% is intentional activity and only 10% is circumstance. And I always found that interesting because it means that over 50% of our happiness is actually something we can control. Where people thought that, oh, I am just this way and I can't ever change.
Mm,
So that was always something that I found interesting because now we have the power, right? Have
mm,
you found that as well? Like, are those numbers seem to be accurate?
definitely. And I think it's also a way of looking at it. You know, the glass is half full, or the glass is half empty. And I
That's
think
true.
it's it's true though. And I think and you also need to understand that 10% of your life circumstances, that's not much. So your happiness is only related to 10% of whatever happens in your life. You know, lockdown, for example, or if things go completely wrong, you know, you lose someone you love, even those things, they're actually only 10% of your happiness. And you need to think about this as really not much. So that also tells you that a lot of happiness is actually based on what you do. 40% of happiness is based on the activities that you do. So again, that tells you a lot about happiness. Happiness is more about what you do and probably less about what happens around you.
That's
And the other
very
thing I
true.
find interesting is actually genetics. I like that you pointed this out because 50%, you can think that's quite a lot. And it's actually related to dopamine receptors in the brain. Like everything, for example, I have poor beard growth. And the reason why that is the case is because I don't have many androgen receptors in my face. And the same is the case for dopamine. You know, if you don't have many dopamine receptors, then you tend to be more mellow. If you have more dopamine receptors in your brain, then you tend to be more hyped up, more energetic. So it has personality changes. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for the individual because, again, you are you. You are who
That
you are.
is super interesting. That is super interesting because I do know people who are super high, happy people, but then I also know people who are just generally more mellow, low key, and quiet. And maybe that also contributes to personality, right? Like you're more,
Mm.
introspective and quiet and maybe antisocial even. But that makes a lot of sense that maybe there's a DNA component or physiological component that contributes to you not even being able to be a little bit more high energy, right?
Mm. There will always be some genetic influences. But the thing is, the point about happiness is really to take what you have and make the best out of it. And I think the idea that, you know, some people, like in sci-fi movies, there's always the idea you can change your DNA, you change your genetics, you just clone yourself in a better way or whatever. But the point is, when you do that, then you're not yourself anymore. You know, you become another person. And I think this idea in itself, it's not about becoming another person by changing your DNA, by cloning yourself, but it's more about taking what you have and becoming the best version of yourself. And anyone can become happy because, like you said, 40% is based on the activities that you do. So anyone, anyone can become happy.
I'm curious because you started talking about dopamine. Are there other hormones or chemicals that contribute to our happiness, or is that the primary one?
Now, dopamine is definitely very important in the equation. Generally, what dopamine actually does, dopamine is the motivation chemical, you could say, and the reward chemical. That's what people probably know it from. So you do something, and the dopamine release in your brain gives you the feeling of reward. For example, you accomplish a difficult task, you feel really good afterwards. This feeling good, that is dopamine. You eat a piece of chocolate, you feel good, that is dopamine. And on the other hand, dopamine is in fact less about reward. That's for people those that don't know, but dopamine is more about motivation, in fact. Because let's say you feel good,
Chocolate.
that is dopamine.
Right.
You have a little bit of background there, but it doesn't matter. In any case, dopamine, let's say you imagine or anticipate eating a piece of chocolate. Thinking about this piece of chocolate releases some dopamine in your brain already. Almost as much as when you get it, as almost as much when you eat the chocolate, in fact. And what the dopamine then does is create cravings. So dopamine is then like, get the chocolate, get the chocolate, get the chocolate. And that then pushes you to actually get the piece of chocolate. And when you get
Makes a
it,
lot of sense.
it's funny, but what dopamine wants more of is dopamine. So, when you get up in the morning, you feel like, I need this, I need to eat, I need to get strong in the gym, I need to get my work done in time. All of these cravings, what pushes you, that is dopamine, because you anticipate the reward.
I'm curious if it kind of works the way they say drugs work, right? That like you reach a certain level and you're high, right? And then you kind of have to keep adding more drug to get to the same or bigger high, right? Does that happen with our chemicals in our bodies too? Like does it start kind of waning even though it's the same amount of chemicals and you need kind of more and more and more to be able to feel the same?
Absolutely. That's actually a really important point you point out, because dopamine, there's desensitization. That means if you stack a lot of activities that all produce dopamine, then you reduce the enjoyment from a single activity. Let's say the gym. Sounds a bit complicated, but it's really not. Let's say in the gym, you enjoy training in the gym. You get dopamine from training in the gym. But then you start drinking coffee. Coffee releases a bit of dopamine. Then you start listening music while you train. Music, again, also dopaminergic activity, or you start looking at that's a big point actually. You start looking at social media. Social media produces tons of dopamine. So
Oh
you
yeah.
stay definitely, that's why social media is so addictive, because just looking at, you get new images, you get new cat videos every single minute.
Yep.
So it produces a lot of dopamine in your brain. That's why it's so addictive. And let's imagine you stack all of that. You go to the gym, you drink your energy drink, you check your phone all the time, stuff like that. Now, if you take one of these off, let's say you remove social media, then the other two things feel less good to you. And the reason why is because your threshold for dopamine is high. You see, in
I
order to get this effect from dopamine, to get this effect that it feels good, that it feels rewarding, you stack a lot of activities. So you up here. Now you remove one of the activity, now you're here. And all of a sudden, it doesn't feel good to you anymore. But you can do the opposite. Let's say you cut out all of the stuff and you go to the gym. Now one day you start drinking an energy drink. So you get a little bit of dopamine, and all of a sudden the gym feels insane. It feels crazy good. So what you always need to remember is that's always the dopamine release you're used to, so your baseline, versus what currently happens in your life. So basically, this dopamine baseline, you can control it. And one of the ways in which you can do it, so you can reduce your dopamine baseline to be more happy about small things, basically. And the way to do this is via dopamine fasting. So dopamine detox is actually very
Mm.
common out there, very popular. You see it everywhere. It is cut out your social media. Don't eat too much. Do fasting. Uh,
Remove sugars, right? Oh yeah.
exactly all of that. And the point of that is to decrease your dopamine threshold, to get it down, because then even a little bit of dopamine feels incredible. For example, if you don't have social media and you read a book, all of a sudden this book is amazing because compared to doing nothing, reading a book is incredible. But if you're used to social media, you check social media every day, which releases tons of dopamine, and then you read a book. A book releases a little bit. In comparison to that, the book is boring. It feels you don't want to read it, it doesn't feel good to you. And that is a way in which you can actually control how good things feel to you and how happy activities make you. And I think another thing that's important to mention here is something, a phenomenon called the hedonic treadmill. You might have ever heard of that, but it's the fact that we always return to the same baseline of happiness. We have this
Interesting.
baseline. It's actually quite interesting because we have this set baseline of happiness here. Something good happens, we get dopamine release, and we feel amazing. But this dopamine release won't be there forever. At some point, it's gone, and then you jump back to baseline. Something good happens, maybe eat a piece of chocolate, dopamine goes up, you feel amazing. But of course, it doesn't last forever. At some point, boom, you get back to normal. And the
Yeah,
same, the same is actually true when something bad happens. You hear, you get an injury, you go down, you feel horrible. But that doesn't last forever. A few weeks, and you're back to normal.
that's
Lockdown,
actually good then, because then we can always, go back to normal, so to speak. Does that baseline ever change over time? Just kind of like we were saying about dopamine fasting, kind of bringing it back down. Can we change our baseline of happiness?
definitely, it's possible, in fact. Now, before we go into changing the baseline, one of the things I wanted to mention is in this context, it's actually proven in studies that people who, for example, get into a wheelchair 6 months after the injury, the happiness levels are back to normal.
Nice.
And that is again hedonic treadmill. Something bad happens, you go down, and then after a few months, you get back to normal. So you always have this preset baseline of happiness.
Cool.
And that actually has many implications because, for the first thing, happiness is a constant job. You cannot just, one day wake up and I'm happy forever. This idea doesn't work because it's related to the dopamine release in your brain. So you need to get a source of dopamine every day, basically. And the second thing, I think that's related to what you said, and that's how do you increase this baseline? Is there a way to do it? And the answer is yes, there is.
Nice.
And I actually made a YouTube video about this. If anyone's interested, if we upload this on YouTube, I can actually link it. And it's about
Yeah.
gratitude.
Your attitude, you said?
Gratitude.
Oh, gratitude. Yes. I'll get into that too later.
Do you do it yourself, by the way, with your clients?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I practice with my clients. But also, like, it's almost interesting because I actually do practice a regular meditation with them to kind of bring them back to themselves and ground their energy. And I always find that most of the clients that come to me, they're usually on the pain side, right? So it kind of in a way brings them back to normal when they're able to like balance themselves. But part of that work is also like giving gratitude, which we'll talk about when we do the tool later on.
Okay. Because I'd be interested in how do you help your clients with it? How do you increase their gratitude? Do you make
Um,
a list, for example, or what do you do?
Well, part of the work is the values work, right? Which I think you do as well, helping them appreciate or understand what their values are. Because if you don't know what you value, then what are you grateful for, right? You're not grateful for anything, or maybe you're grateful for what other people tell you you're grateful for. So when you can understand the things that you value, then you can start saying, hey, I'm grateful for those things, right? Because I really value them. So let's say like I practice something in the morning where I wake up every morning and I'm grateful for having, a soft bed to sleep on and a soft pillow, for having clean water every single day, for being able to have, if I like coffee, a Starbucks at the corner of my home, for having, my family around, like all the like small things and big things, right? Not just like when fantastic things happen, which is great, but also the little things which people ignore most of the time. Have
Mm.
you had that experience too?
Me, actually, I let my clients do a very simple thing because
Mm-hmm.
what I personally do as well is improvement journaling, as I call it. So I always have my evening journal. And as part of this journal, I have a question, and that is, what are the 10 things you're grateful for today? I let my clients do it. I do it myself. And again, why should you do that? Sounds a bit like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
wishy-washy. Why do you do that? Wishful thinking. And the answer is no, it's actually beneficial for you because you basically teach yourself to be more happy. And it has real effects in your brain, in fact, because we all have a information filter in our brain. It's down here. It's the reticular activating system, RAS, if you have
Right.
ever heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a little negativity bias in our brain, unfortunately. That's what people don't know. And it's the fact that 10 pieces of information that go into our brain, nine are actually negative. And this is because to ensure our survival. I mean, we're still alive, obviously. We're still here as a species. And one of the reasons is because we tend to be skeptical of the information that comes in. We look at it in a negative way. And again, this is a mechanism to protect ourselves, but it's of course not good to live happy lives. And the way in which you can skew this towards positivity is by forcing yourself to be more positive, to be more grateful for what happens. And you can actually reprogram the information filter in your brain so that you spot positive things more easily.
Yeah. It's
Another
practice.
bunch, definitely all about practice. I think you have a lot of experience with it, with your clients. Have you actually any positive results to report?
Yeah, I actually had a client. I mean, I've had a lot of clients who report that they've, raised up their energy, their creativity, they have reconnection to themselves, but it's kind of all inner work, right? Like it's all the stuff that we kind of do to make ourselves better. But in one in particular, I remember that he actually was going through depression. So this is a perfect
Mm,
story regarding happiness, because our goal with him was really to raise his energy and his level of happiness. And actually, one of the goals he personally had was to reduce and hopefully even remove the antidepressants that he was on. So
mm,
we did actually manage to do that. And the way that we actually did it was because in understanding what he did every day, like what he actually physically did the moment that he woke up, what he realized is that he didn't start out depressed every morning. He might start out tired, or maybe a little low vibe or something like that, but he never started fully depressed every morning. And so what happened is that he realized that it was his mindset, right? And then the actions he would take based on that, right? So if he was tired, then he would like start believing things about it, like, oh, it's just my depression kicking in or something like that, right? So everything kind of like worked on itself. So he'd wake up, he'd feel bad about feeling tired. So then he thought to himself, oh, well, this is my depression kicking in, so I'm not going to wake up. And then, like, so it turned into a whole cycle of things that he would do that would eventually turn into depression, right? And
mm,
so I basically deprogrammed him and started him off every morning on sort of like a cycle of, okay, what do you need in the morning? Maybe you can have a cold glass of water, open the window shade, let the sun come in and let it shine on your face. Like, like different things, get up, like actually physically stand up instead of just, laying on your bed and thinking about the possibility of getting up for the next 15 minutes, right? So little progressive steps that eventually he was able to do. And, then bigger steps would happen. Then, he got up and then he was able to make breakfast. And then, eventually we got him to start applying for jobs, and like, all these different bigger things started happening. And then he did reduce his antidepressant medication. And so, but what we realized that again, it was like a cycle of different small actions and mindsets that led to him being depressed, which we can then go backwards, right? And like start
Mm.
adding better things to how you process your day, to increase your energy and increase your happiness. Do you have any examples like that, or I'm sure you have tons of examples.
Now, first and foremost, I want to say that's an amazing story. It's just how you, again, activity is 40%. And I love
Yeah,
how you just animated your client to actually do that, to just get up in the morning, you know, sunshine, and then go from there step by step.
yeah,
And it's also related to dopamine once again, because every time you reach a little mini goal, you get a little bit of dopamine in your brain. Makes you
right.
happy, makes you more motivated. And it keeps you shooting for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And it's just a wonderful story to see the progression from, stuck in bed to applying for jobs, and then, yeah, hopefully getting a job, I would imagine.
It's kind of interesting because it totally applies to what you were saying about raising your levels, right? Like that's exactly what happened. Like he was down here, and then eventually he just started stacking different things that eventually raise, yeah, his dopamine levels, his chemical reactions in his body, all the different like emotional mind related activities that were going on throughout his day. So it definitely was a leveling up, right?
Nice. Once again, it's all about what do you do in your daily lives. That decides how happy you are for the
Yeah.
most part. And just brilliant story. I love this. That's it. I think there are actually a few other neurochemicals that I haven't even mentioned. So, of course, there's, of course, dopamine. Dopamine is actually more about motivation, and dopamine is more about quenching the feeling of pain that you get when you don't have a reward. Because everyone thinks dopamine is pleasure, but what dopamine actually is quenching the feeling of pain, again, of not having it. You start a diet and you feel like there's this beautiful piece of cake. I want this cake. I want to eat it. And you don't want to eat the cake because it feels so good, because you feel great after eating the cake, but you want to eat the cake to get rid of this pain of not being able to eat the cake. Think about it. That's why you have lockdown. You cannot go to the gym. That's what happened to me. And I get this craving to go to the gym, and it's physical pain, basically what happens. That is what dopamine does. So dopamine pushes you to get it, to actually get rid of this pain. So that's what dopamine does. So dopamine, while it's important for pleasure, while it makes you feel good after you get a reward, the role of dopamine is less about happiness, but more about pushing you to get a reward.
Right. Makes
What
sense.
is important? That is one of the things to mention. Dopamine important, but it's more about quenching the pain of not having something. The second thing was serotonin. Serotonin is actually also released via gratitude. And serotonin does the exact opposite. It makes you lazy. Literally. So serotonin, when you have a lot of serotonin in your brain, then you feel content, you feel satisfied. For example, eat a big meal. After that, you feel quite lazy. You feel comfortable, nice warm belly. That
That
is
makes
what
sense.
serotonin does. And I think that's also why gratitude is so important, because you want to have a practice of serotonin in your life, something that increases serotonin in your brain. It could also be looking at old photos of your old, uh, for example, trips, a trip to Italy, whatever it is. I did that as a kid. And just looking at the old photos releases some serotonin in your brain to give you this feeling of satisfaction, of contentment. And I think that is what most people are actually looking for when they think about happiness, because dopamine is the chemical that drives you, that pushes you forward to achieve your goals, to become a better self. Whereas serotonin is what you want in order to be more content with yourself. So that is just something I want to point out.
That's very interesting. Just wanted to say something about that because
Mhm.
in practice, I hear people say things like, "Well, if I'm just grateful for what I have, then I'm never going to reach for more things that I want." But actually, I think it's the opposite, right? I think the more you're grateful for what you have and the more contentment you have where you are, the better state of wellness you're in, and the more resourcefulness you have, and the more different reactions in your body can take place, different mindset, different ways of thinking about things can happen so that you can actually go out and do and get the things that you want. Does that make sense?
You absolutely nailed it there. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because Remember what I mentioned in the beginning. Happy people are more successful.
Right.
Successful people are not more happy. So you need to learn to increase serotonin in your brain. In other words, you need to learn to be happy with what you have in your daily life. Gratitude, for example. And this puts you in a positive state. And again, this positive state makes it easier for you, easier to accomplish your goals. Again, it's always a bit of it's a bit of messing with both. You want to have your dopamine in check so that you don't get lazy as hell. You don't want too much, you don't want too little dopamine. And with serotonin, also not good if you have too much because it makes you lazy. So it's really about managing both. But ultimately, you want to have a practice like gratitude in your life, again, to be more happy, to become happy, to be happy now.
I
All
love
right.
that. Love it. So I have a question for you then, because I know that you love to talk about this idea of um, being in a state of flow, which is a form of happiness, right? Um, so what is this concept of flow and mindfulness, and how do you get there?
Now, I actually shared a nice quote that was by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Now, his name is a tongue breaker. Actually, he needed a few tries to get it right. But Mihaly, he is actually the founder of positive psychology, and he's the one who discovered flow, who made flow popular. And let's see if I still have the quote here somewhere. I need to check.
By the
Now,
way, we have someone messaging in,
mm,
Siani, and she's going through that right now. I'm not happy in the place I'm in, and I feel like everything around me is not right, not okay, and I feel down all the time. Yeah. So what we were saying totally applies. Like, where can you find things to be grateful for? Where can you find that things are going right, that things are actually okay, that you're well and safe and healthy and different things in your life right now? Because that's going to attract, and you're going to be able to get more of that if you can be in that state of gratitude.
definitely. I think, don't forget we have a negativity bias in the brain. 10, out of 10 pieces of information that go into our brain, 9 are negative. And
Yeah.
just realizing that, you need to realize that you tend to overhype the bad things in life. You do that automatically. And the way to counter that is to be positive on purpose. Because trust me, you have a lot of amazing things in your life. I remember one of my clients, when I told her to make this gratitude list in the evening, she said she needed, I think it was 10 minutes to make a list of 10 things. 10
Wow.
minutes. And then I remember I talked to her a weekend later and she was like, yeah, I got it done in 2 minutes. And I was like, damn, that is an improvement.
That
And
is improvement.
you already see it there. It's just if you never do it, if you never actually focus on the positive things in your life, then it's really difficult for you to see it. But on the other hand, if you start doing it, if you start to focus on the good things in your life, it will become a habit. And it will be a lot easier to counter the negative things. So again, get that serotonin. That's what I would say in this case.
Yeah.
Program the information filter in your brain this way. All right. I found the quote, by the way. It's just,
Awesome. Let's hear it.
it was a quote from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Again, he was the discoverer of flow. And he said that contrary to what we usually believe, moments like these, the best moments in our lives, are not the passive, receptive, and relaxing times. So it's not when we relax, but instead, the best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. So, what this quote tells us is that it's not the times when we are relaxed, not the times when we lie on the beach, slurp our pina colada. Basically, it's not those times when we feel at our best, our happiest. It's actually those times when we really have a big goal in front of us, when we
Yeah.
push the big goal, and especially if we want to help others with this goal. In those moments, those are the happiest moments in our lives because those moments are the moments that get us into flow. And flow is this deeply absorbed state in which you're so deeply immersed into what you're doing that you literally forget everything else. You don't literally, it's because the brain area called the prefrontal cortex is inactivated in flow. So that's why your self disappears. You forget about going to the bedroom. Time disappears. So 5 hours can feel like 5 minutes and things like that.
I
So
love that. I'm curious if you agree with the statement. I always find that the moments that I'm in flow are the moments that I am doing something that's really meaningful to me, right? So if I'm in with a client, every time I work with a client, at the end of it, I'm like, wow, that was like an amazing session. I was totally in the zone with this client, and it was such a meaningful interaction that I had with this person because I was doing something that meant something for me, which is to support and help others, right? Because that's one of my meaningful goals. So, what do you think about that? About meaning, doing things that are meaningful and flow?
absolutely. You nailed it once again. You need purpose, you need passion.
Yeah.
In fact, as a flow coach, this is one of the first things I do, and that is helping people find their purpose. So, what are the things they love doing? And then I let them think about, all right, now you know what you love doing. Ideally, it's not video gaming, except if that's your profession. But then again, if you know what it is, then you can think about how can I make use of what I love to help other people? How can I make use of this activity that I love to help other people? And it is this way because passion and purpose, they both are ways to get a lot of dopamine from what you do. Because that's one of the things, there are two ways to get your dopamine. The first one is to work to get a reward, to get a piece of chocolate and eat it. That gives you dopamine. The second way is to do something that you love, an activity. You could play football or soccer. If you like playing soccer, it releases dopamine. Likewise, even challenges. If you tackle a big challenge, a difficult challenge, and you tell yourself, I need to do this, I want to do this. For example, I want to run 5 minutes longer than yesterday, and I love the feeling of pushing harder. If you tell yourself this, then challenge releases dopamine in your brain. So challenge can be a source of dopamine. On the other
Mhm.
hand, if you tell yourself, I hate running, it sucks, I hate going to the gym, then you don't get any dopamine from the activity, and the activity is not good for you. And again, dopamine actually gets you into flow. That's what you also need to know. So if you do an activity, you get dopamine, and this dopamine then gets you into this flow state. And flow, I say it as a coach all over again, flow is the most productive, the most creative, and the most fulfilled state you can be in. It's actually proven studies that flow increases your productivity by 500%, creativity by 430%, and even fulfillment and meaning by 200%.
That's crazy.
It's
That's
crazy.
insane.
So that's why everyone who watches this, everyone who's watching, once again, it's about finding this activity. It's about finding what do you love. Ideally, it's what you do in your job, but it can also be playing an instrument. Funny enough, it was actually video gaming for me. I admit it. It was probably when I was in school. So again, I got so absorbed in video gaming. But
Yeah.
nowadays, it's really what I do as my job as a neuroscientist, working in the lab, making content for you guys, coaching with our clients, or like you said, just being so absorbed into a conversation that is also flow. And it's just looking for these, looking for these moments in which you do the activities that you love, and looking for these moments in which you challenge yourself to become a better person. Because to close the flow part off, what are the happiest people in the world? And there are three levels of happiness, in fact. Maybe you've actually heard of that. The first level is moment to moment happiness. You eat a piece of chocolate, you get dopamine, you feel happy, and it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You buy the car of your dreams, you feel happy, a day later, it's gone. You get the job of your dreams, you're happy for one day, maybe a week, and it's gone. And I think that's what you need to realize, and that's getting something doesn't make you happy. Because you would have to get something every single day. You would have to get a dream job every single day. And that's probably unrealistic. So that's not a good source of happiness. So that's why I want to get happiness from the things that you do every single day. That's why you want to do what you love. That is the key to happiness. And in fact, level two of happiness are people that have a lot of flow in their lives. So these are people that do a lot of things that they love.
Yeah, I love that.
And finally, the third level is purpose. It's called purpose because those are people that have a high flow lifestyle, that do what they love every single day, and they do it in order to have a positive impact on other people. That's what I remind myself of, that all of the things I do as a neuroscientist to help people with dementia, as a high performance coach to help my clients become their best selves. I do what I love and I do it in order to help others. And again, that is the ticket to flow. And that's what I want to tell everyone here. Think about it. What do you love and how can you help others with it?
I love that. Love, love, love that. Yes. It's what I tell my clients too, like just to be connected to what they love to do. And one of the things I do have to say about your job, though, is that it's really a common misconception that your job has to be what you know, your purpose is, but that doesn't always happen that way, right? Sometimes your job actually funds your purpose. Do you know what I'm saying? So sometimes you need tools, right? Or things, supporters, people, jobs that actually help support that bigger vision that you have for your purpose or whatever it is that that is meaningful that you want to bring out into the world. So don't think that it always has to be the same, right? It can actually be a supporter of your purpose.
Always some nice thoughts, which actually that reminds me of the fact that I wanted to ask about you. Because happiness is, of course, a very common topic. Everyone has a different idea of happiness. And I think I also showed or explained today the neurobiology behind happiness. But what about you? What is your personal experience with happiness? So how did you become a a purpose coach? And what is your,
Yeah. Well, for me, I actually went through depression. So it's like perfect to the story of what we're talking about. I went through depression in college. I went through burnout throughout my corporate career. I was stressed out, overwhelmed, all the things, right? So I actively sought happiness, right? Like I was like, this is not the way my life is going to go. And I was like, I sought all the tools, all the things to figure out what that actually was for me. And so I realized a few things. One, I realized I was giving other people control over my own life. And so I was following basically what other people thought happiness meant and applying it to myself. And that never works, right? Because you're like, one person's happiness is not your happiness. So I had to give myself permission to live my life on my terms with my ideas of happiness and joy, right?
Mm,
Um, and then two, in choosing different, I realized that focusing on what's meaningful to me is what ultimately raised my energy and connected me to happiness. So what I thought was meaningful did bring me into that state of flow, did continuously make me feel like I'm doing something meaningful for me, for the world, like all the things. And that was epic for me because growth, gratitude, contribution to the world in my unique way, connection and community, like all those things are what I do with the work I do now. And that's ultimately what brought me the biggest happiness and basically pulled me out of depression and burnout and all the things. I was talking to someone recently and I said, they say that burnout and stress is just misplaced energy. And I agree, right? Because like when
mm,
you're burnt out and depressed and all these things, you're placing your energy on the negativity, right? On what's not going well, on the things that are bad and all these different things. When you're replacing the energy on the other side, right? You're focusing on the gratitude, what things are going actually well, what is meaningful to you, what you love, what you enjoy, and all those things. And that's something I had to learn. I wish I had you in the back of my ear saying that in my back pocket. I had to learn it the hard way, but hopefully everyone here is going to learn it the easy way now.
mm. It's amazing. Once again, it's just you showed with your personal story that just doing what makes you happy and not doing what makes other people happy is the way to go. And it actually is related to something called autonomy. Autonomy is the idea that you steer your own ship, you're the master of your own life. I think I mentioned it in another video potentially, but it's the idea that if you are forced to do something, then it actually has negative health consequences for you. There was actually a fun study with mice. So you take a mouse, you put it into a spinning wheel, and you let it run. Mice love running, so it's a fun activity for them. And in fact, what happens is that the mouse gets healthier. So cholesterol levels goes down, the mouse loses a little bit of weight, stuff like that. Inflammation goes down in the body, so super
Interesting.
healthy. But now you put the mouse into the spinning wheel and you force it. You force spin it, and what happens is that stress goes up. The mouse gets stressed, cholesterol goes up, in fact, the mouse gains weight, inflammation markers go up, so the mouse gets unhealthy. So once again, you do the exact same thing, and the only difference is that on the one side, the mouse enjoys doing it. The mouse wants to run in the spinning wheel, and yet on the other hand, the mouse is forced to do it. So that tells you whatever you do in your life, it must never be forced, because if you force yourself, again, you will just decrease your health. And what I tell my clients is that with autonomy, the best way to get this feeling of control is to either A, love what you do, that's the obvious choice, or B, want to do what you have to do. So that means that you have to come up with reasons, with meaning. I think that's also a big topic for you, Tiani. It's just the fact
Yeah,
of meaning. So I do this for a reason. I do this task or I do this job because I have to earn money for my family, and so that I can do study a degree, for example, maybe study neuroscience, and again, then ultimately do what I want to do. That's why I do this shitty job, basically. So it's just about reframing in a way that either A, of course, you love what you do, or B, you reframe it in a way that you want to do it for a reason, for purpose, for meaning. So that's why we talk about meaning and purpose all along, because it is fundamental for your health.
I love that. And I love the idea of reframing. I use that a lot with my clients because I think that oftentimes we're so focused on whatever experience that we have in the moment and seeing how bad it is, but we don't see the good things that it actually can bring to you and how you can actually change the story around it to make it work for you versus having it drain you, right?
Definitely.
Love that.
Again, life just happens. I like to say when it rains, rain, for example, rain is neutral. It just rains. It's not good or bad. But the way you interpret it makes it good or bad. For example, some people love rain. It's a nice, I like the sound of rain actually, and you can sleep quite well when it rains. So it can be a very comfortable feeling. But on the other hand, if you're outside and the rain hits you and you get all drenched, not fun. So some people hate rain. Then they're like, "Ah, rain sucks. I hate it." And again,
Perspective.
absolutely everything that happens to you in life isn't good or bad, but you make it good or bad by interpreting it as good or bad. And again, that is one of the most fundamental things in life. The way you look at it matters.
I love it. So, speaking of perspective, one last question for you. What do you think? Is happiness an action or a state or both?
It is a fun question. And I think it's a bit of both. Of the one hand, of course, activities, as I told you, there is the fact that flow, the doing what you love, very important for
Hmm.
happiness. But on the other hand, of course, there's also the rewards, because it is nice to get a job promotion. So that gives you a little bit of happiness as well, or
Yeah,
these things. So it's a little bit of both. Although personally, I would say you skew it towards actions, because you mentioned yourself 40% of happiness is dependent on the activities that you do. So ideally, you make sure that you do what you love. You get the dopamine from the activities that you do every single day. How come you asked me this question, by the way? I find this interesting.
I love it. So, the background of that question is that I actually used to use it when I did a lot of when I used to do online dating. And that's one of the questions that I
Okay.
asked the guys that I would date. And of course, it was like a trick question because it's both, right? But it tells you a lot about where people are, if they say, oh, well, it's just a state of being, right? Or it's like, it's just the things that I do, right? So it kind of tells you a lot about the person's personality, how they live their life, and what they think about happiness, right? Which for me is a huge and important topic. So
Did I pass? Would you date me?
You passed.
Awesome.
It's no fair. You're a neuroscientist, so it's no fair.
Oh, okay.
But
Right.
it's a good question to ask. Just saying, if y'all ever go online dating, it's a good question to ask.
Ooh, you heard her. Guys, be careful what you say.
All right.
Anyhow,
So you
one of
want
the
to get
things,
into the tool? Yeah.
definitely, that's what I just wanted to ask you. And that
Cool.
is, I mean, we talked a lot about happiness, but what do you actually do, Tiani, with your clients?
Okay.
How do you make them more happy?
So I wanted to talk about one tool. I mean, there's tons of tools, but the one of the tools that I like to do regularly with myself and with my clients, I do this actually every morning, is something that I learned from Tony Robbins. And my background, actually, I did get trained through the Tony Robbins coaching. So it's called a priming exercise. And this is where we get to bring in oxygen, we bring awareness to your body, we bring in energy, and we bring in gratitude, and basically like it's an exercise that brings all of them together, and then in the end we get to apply them to the things that we want to accomplish in life. So it actually covers a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. And so I'm just going to show you a super quick version of it,
Mm.
that you can practice at home. So basically I get up every morning and I put my hands up here near my shoulders. And what we're going to do when you prime is that you push up, right? So it's actually physical exercise, and you breathe. So you're going to be doing like,
I think I grabbed my barbell for that. Why not? Morning workout.
so you basically do this 10 times, like 10, do that 10 times. And while you're doing that, that's the first round. You basically think about, the first thing in the morning you think about is everything that you're grateful for. For me, I'm constantly grateful for, the bed that I sleep on, waking up another day, being able to go to work, like, all the being able to support people, like all the things that you're grateful for. This is what you're going to be thinking about as you do your first round. And then when you do your second round, another round of 10, you basically use that energy of feeling good and feeling aligned, and maybe you're feeling in flow also when you're thinking about those things, and you amplify it. You imagine that your body is amplifying that feeling. So as you're priming, you're just feeling the energy of being in that wonderful state of mind of being grateful and having meaning and all those beautiful things. And then the third round, when you're doing your priming, is you think about 3 things that you want to accomplish that day.
Mhm.
And the idea is that you're taking that energy, right? All that gratefulness, all that meaning, all the delicious feel good stuff that you're already experiencing from the first 2 rounds, and you're going to bring it into the 3 things that you want to accomplish that day.
Mm.
It's such a good way to start your day, I have to say. So that's what I do every morning, and I do with my clients.
Sounds awesome because you actually combine many good things. The first one is physical movement. And again, moving yourself,
Yeah.
one of the easiest way, again, changing your body language, energizing yourself this way. Then, of course, gratitude to prime yourself for positivity. So gratitude is
Yeah.
a very simple state, again, serotonin release. So you get into this content state, relaxed state. And then, of course, setting goals, very important. I love this as a high performance coach. If you wake up in the morning, then you should set up to 3 goals. And I love how you make it part of this practice. It's amazing. I love it. I should
Yeah.
steal this, you
And
know?
it's also hyperoxygenation because, like, dopamine, right? Like chemical reactions in your body from hyperoxygenation of your body. So it just makes you feel so good.
Definitely.
Love it. So cool. Is there one that you think is helpful for happiness?
Now, it's actually a very simple thing. I'm more of a systematic person as a high performance coach. And one of the simplest things you can do is to make a list. Because we have talked about the fact that 40% of happiness is dependent on the activities that you do every single day. So what I let my clients do is make a list. What do they do? It could be work, hopefully not video gaming, I'd say, but it could be anything basically. So
That
just
could
make
be
a list.
one of the things.
But it's really just making a list of what do you do in your daily life. Talking to others, very important, because I haven't mentioned it, but again, having those strong bonds with others, that is also oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that neurochemical that produces bonding, feeling good, trust, empathy. You only get it from strong personal connections. So with your lover, with your best friends. And oxytocin, it's coupled to dopamine because when you get a lot of oxytocin, you also get a lot of dopamine along with it, and especially basically nature's way of rewarding you for seeking friendships, for seeking relationships. But so again, social interactions very, very important for happiness because I think I mentioned it in another video as well, but it's the fact that our brain is twice the size of that of animals because of additional social structures. And on the other hand, if you don't have social connectivity, then your brain sees that as a survival risk. Because it was, think about Stone Age. You're all alone in a snowstorm. You're probably not well off. And that is exactly why social connection is so important for me, for us, sorry. And in fact, there's actually a little pesky molecule called tachykinin. Tachykinin is actually released when you don't have social interactions. And what tachykinin does, it makes you feel depressed. It makes you feel anxious. It can even cause paranoia. And the way to suppress tachykinin in your brain is to talk to other people, to have social interactions. So once again, don't neglect social interactions. That is crucial for happiness as well and how you feel. Now, that said, again, just list all of the activities that you do. Also, talking maybe could be, again, catching up with your best friends, whatever it is. And then finally, thinking about it, what or which of these activities make me happy? Which of these activities do I value? I love how you put this down with the how you explain it with based on values. So
Yeah.
I love cooking, for example. For me, cooking is an amazing activity. I don't want to skip it because I love it. And the reality is, of all of the things that you do, 20% of the activities give you 80% of your happiness. It's a good old Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. So again, 20% of everything that you do gives you most of your happiness. And it's really about figuring out those 20%. For me, it's cooking and going to the gym and lab work or just my work in general.
I love
That's,
that.
those few things make me happy. And that's why I make sure to have that in my schedule every day, ideally. Then, of course, I make sure to catch up with my family every weekend. I always have Skype sessions, no matter what happens. I catch up with my friends in the evening, things such as that, because I know it's important for me. And if I don't get social connections, then I get the freaking tachykinin in my brain, which will make me depressed and
Right.
anxious. So just thinking about what are the few things that actually make me happy. It's really not much, maybe three things at max, and then making sure to do them every day. And I think it also gives you power because now you know happiness is based on what you do. So all you need to do is to make the activities that make you happy, and you will stay happy. And that is the best way to happiness,
I
at
love
least
that.
based
You
on
should
the result.
repeat that again. 20% of what you do creates 80% of your happiness. That's mind blowing. Such a
Right.
small amount, right?
Mm,
So good. Love it. Love it. Love that exercise. So good. Okay. So let's wrap up, shall we? I think we have a
definitely.
couple of things that we want to give people. Do you want to talk about your freebie on your website and
Now,
your program you have coming up?
I don't have a specific freebie for you guys, but what I have in mind is actually a high performance course. So in January, I will run a little course, high performance, and the course, the content of it will be to help you find your passion and your purpose. And in addition to that, I will help you to acquire the elite performance skills to accomplish these goals. So it would be time and task management, how you can improve your health, because there are many scientifically backed things such as fasting, for example, which is incredibly healthy. But that's just an example. There are many things you can do to become more healthy, to improve your brain function. And of course, that will be the main point. Also, how you get into flow. So how can you get into this super focused and productive state? And there will also be other things such as how you can control your autonomic nervous system to control stress. So there will be methods. How can I increase stress when I feel sluggish to be more alert? How can I decrease stress when I'm anxious, when it's too much? We will also look into how you can change your beliefs. How can you adopt positive beliefs that help you in accomplishing your goals? And of course, we will look at serotonin and dopamine, how to optimize them for ideal motivation. So all of that will be part of the high performance course. So if anyone is interested in that, send me an email at nicholas.p.reich@gmail.com. I can give you more information later, but just about contacting me either via email, LinkedIn, etc. And we can talk about it. We can have a little consultation call and talk about your goals and whether we are a good fit.
I love that. Guys, he's a neuroscientist. I'm just saying. He's got something to back up his claims.
I like to look at the
Oh,
studies.
yeah,
Generally, I'm a skeptical person as a scientist. I don't just believe things. And again, I like to do what is proven to work.
I love that.
With
I
personal
love that.
experience, that is.
Yes, sounds awesome. Yes, so cool. And then I am actually offering my Burnout to Zen kit, which will help you if, especially if you're feeling burnt out and stressed out right now, which a lot of people are, especially during the holidays. You can learn the symptoms. You can learn all the questions you can ask yourself, in 21 ways to flow into high energy, purpose, and abundance. So you can download the kit on my website, teanyhidalgo.com. So I'll post it below as well, and we'll post Nicholas's information as well, so that you can email him about his course. I'm so excited. So we're going to do this again, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, definitely post below. We'd love to answer them. For the young lady who sent her experiences, thank you so much for posting your story. Next month, we're going to talk about a Q&A on recovery, stress, mental recovery. So that's going to be amazing, I think, especially post-holiday, right?
Oh, yeah. As I like to say, push hard, but recover harder.
Yeah, I love that.
That's the way you do it.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Nick. It's do you mind me calling you Nick? Do you like Nick or Nicholas? Whatever
That's
you like.
fine. Go ahead.
I will catch up with you next month, and thanks everyone for joining.
Definitely. Thank you guys for joining. It was amazing to have you all. And have a nice day. Have a happy day, that
Have a
is.
happy holidays too.
All right. I'll see you all.
And that concludes the video. So as always, thank you for your time and attention. And if you enjoyed the video and if you want to support the channel, please like, subscribe and share the video with your friends and those who could benefit from it, so that we can build an army of neuroscience and high performance enthusiasts together. I would strongly appreciate it. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you have any questions for our third Dogma Breaker Q&A, which will be about the topic of stress and recovery, please just drop your questions in the comments and we will make sure to answer them for you. That said, have a happy week and Merry Christmas in front of you, high performers, and I will see you in the next video.